Back in June, I was walking my dog Arnie when I came upon a yard sale. It was a bit out of place, as it was in one of the fancier neighbourhoods, and I've never actually seen a yard sale anywhere near there before. There were two men, both in their 40s, talking to customers and trying to keep up appearances. The front yard was littered with cheap plastic tables, each one cluttered with various knickknacks. Every table had some sort of themed items. Some of the items looked strangely personal, things like old teddy bears and colouring books. I walked past tables labelled kitchen, bedroom, bathroom, and study. At the very end was a smaller table just called Christie. The Christie table was the epitome of 90s nostalgia. A few old My Little Pony toys, cassette tapes, and sealed plastic bags with various random toys for $1. There were old jackets and shirts, all with the same size. Also a few no-spill cups and a pair of crutches, child-sized. I tried not to see the story the items told. Instead, I dug into the meat of the table, the massive collection of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle collectibles. Christie had it all: the Technodrome, the Party Wagon, the Foot Cruiser, and Shredder's Drill. Pretty much all the action figures: Bebop, Rocksteady, Krang, Splinter, Foot Soldiers, April, the Rat King, Casey Jones. Every character I could even vaguely remember, and then some. As an old TMNT fan, I wanted to get it all and put it on a shelf in my man cave. Maybe put up some RGB lights. I just couldn't imagine the price. "Cowabunga," said one of the men holding the sale. "Not bad, huh?" "No, this is very thorough. Some of this looks almost new." Christie didn't play much. She just liked the company. He sighed. "You interested?" $100 for the lot. 100? Seriously? That was insane. $100 for the entire collection. Some of it as close to mint in box as you could get. Well, without the box. She would have wanted a fan to have it. He smiled. "You got the right look about you. All proceeds go to charity." "In that case," I said, "I insist on 150. You drive a hard bargain." We shook on it. I came around with my car and picked up the whole lot. The other man was openly weeping on the lawn, clutching the Donatello toy. Apparently it had been a favourite. It looked like the only thing that had been played with. I insisted on him keeping it, but he forced himself to part with it. "Just put him up forward," he said. "He's important." I begrudgingly agreed. Leonardo was my favourite, but I wasn't going to argue. I bought 2 shelves, some RGB lights, and a timer. I wanted the entire collection to light up at night automatically. I'd seen a poster as well, and if I framed it all just right, it would look amazing. Arnie, my golden retriever / Dachshund mix, was beyond himself. My enthusiasm was contagious, and he picked up on it instantly. I could barely put the shelves up with him brushing up against my legs and asking to play. All in all, it took me about 2 hours to fill the shelves, and there was still a box of things left. Mostly kitchen stuff like faded plastic mugs and plates. But there, at the bottom of the box, was something I'd never seen before. The Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle Ouija board. It was clearly not official merchandise. It was hand-painted, but whoever made it had been meticulous. They'd traced the turtle's font over every letter and number and used the correct colour scheme. Instead of the "no" in the top right corner, it said "no way." Instead of "goodbye," it said "later, dude." And instead of "yes," was the ever-present "Cowabunga." The thing was built to last. It was made of a solid slab of oak and had layers upon layers of finish. Next to it, at the very bottom, was a planchette that looked like one of Donatello's gadgets. There was even a sort of magnifying glass in the middle. All in all, It looked like it was made with great care. Still, it wasn't official merchandise. Yet there was something about it. It was the kind of curio that just begged to be displayed, so I hung it up on the wall in place of a poster. Once those RGB lights kicked in, it looked fantastic. $150 was a steal. The following weekend, I had a few friends over for dinner. The new TMNT shelves was an instant talking point. The figures were all taken down and looked at, and even jokingly played with. Bruce rearranged them, putting Leonardo in the front, like I'd wanted to do all along. He's the leader, Bruce argued. Donatello just does machines. But once the talk about the show and the endless reboots subsided, one question remained on everyone's mind. What the hell was the deal with the Ouija board? It was passed around and examined, admired even. Everyone agreed that it was very well made, sturdy, with some weight to it. Unlike most of the plastic crap sold back then, it was Jamie that suggested we take it out for a test spin. She wanted to ask the turtles some questions. We were about 4 drinks and a hefty dinner in before we all decided it was a great idea. Arnie wasn't as convinced, quietly pacing back and forth with the tail between his legs. I thought he was just anxious because of all the strange people. But now that I look back on it, I think there was something more to it. There were 7 of us huddled around a small coffee table. Jamie was the first to ask if there were any heroes in a half shell there. Bruce was clearly pushing towards Cowabunga. There were a few other rounds with questions like, did the Shredder get you? And what do you think of the Michael Bay adaptation? And everyone around the table just laughed it off. Kenneth tilted the table, but didn't even manage to move the planchette. He did manage to spill Jamie's drink though. Once the laughter died down, it was Grace that asked the first actual question. It took us all by a bit of surprise. Why did you make this board? She asked. We all put a finger on the planchette, some more interested than others. Jamie and Bruce had both mentally checked out, while Grace and Kenneth were all in. Morgan and Jody didn't seem too bothered, and I just didn't know what to make of it. I'd never used one of these before. Then the planchette moved. It was a sudden, twitchy moment. Even Bruce seemed surprised. It jumped to A, Grace gasped and shook her head. Then it moved to later dude. A later dude? Smiled Jamie. I don't get it. It usually says goodbye there, said Grace. So, a goodbye. Did you make this as a goodbye? Jamie, who sat next to the Cowabunga, took a drink. The rest of us, all in awkward positions, saw the planchette move towards her. The answer was a clear yes. Well, a Cowabunga. As a goodbye, I nodded, thinking back to the child-sized crutches and the no-spill cups. It made sense. Later that night, as I was cleaning up the party, Arnie started freaking out. He was hiding behind the couch, making all sorts of odd, complaining noises. I was putting away dishes in the dishwasher when I heard something thud from the nearby hallway. I put away the last wine glass and checked it out. At first, I didn't notice it. It took me a few moments to realize Leonardo had fallen off the shelf. I just put him back up, not thinking twice about it. He was the leader after all. Of course he should fall first. I couldn't get Arnie out from under the couch. We skipped his walk that night. The following morning, Leonardo was once again on the floor, face down. I was barely awake when I bent down to pick him up. There was a creaking noise, and I froze like a deer in headlights. Then the shelves came crashing down. It was sudden and violent. The bottom shelf thumped down straight across my shin bones, and the top shelf almost shot out from the wall, leaving the screws behind. The Technodrome poked me in the eye, and the party wagon almost knocked one of my front teeth out. My heart was pounding, and Arnie was barking his heart out. This was completely out of nowhere. Arnie rushed in and licked my face, pacing back and forth. I just sat there, covered in bruises and plastic. In front of me, leaning against the wall, was the Donatello toy. I can't even recall seeing him fall. Had he been sitting there the entire time? I put the shelves up again, reinforced, with better screws. I fixed the lights, put the Ouija board back up, and triple tested it. They were solid enough for me to hang from, so this wouldn't happen again. Still, I couldn't shake the feeling that it hadn't been an accident. While my bruises came and went, I started getting paranoid. Every time I walked past the shelf, it felt like the toys were watching me. I could swear the wheels of the party wagon were turning by themselves, and I could hear plastic clicking. Maybe my head was playing tricks with me, but it seemed that things were moving, albeit just a little. An arm twisting, a leg turning, painted white eyes staring at me. Also, I could have sworn I put Donatello in the back, but he always seemed to end up in the front. That same night, Arnie refused to even enter the hallway. And honestly, it was all getting to me. That shelf full of collectibles was starting to feel threatening rather than comforting. I considered packing it all up and putting it into storage, or just selling it, but that Ouija board just made me think twice about it. Eventually, I decided to take a second look at the Ouija board. I brought it and the planchette into the living room, put it down, and looked over it thoroughly. I noticed that there were some scuffs in the pane in the corner. The wood underneath looked old. Like, really old. I had an idea. A piece of paper over the surface and started tracing with a pen. You know, when you gently brush from side to side to see if there are any patterns in the grooves underneath. And there were, just painted over. There was a second board underneath, but it had been painted over. The words were some sort of foreign symbols, and there were more letters. I didn't recognize them, or the order, but I think it was some sort of Cyrillic. There were also a few words placed in irregular spots that I didn't know what they meant. What do I do with you? I didn't even think about what I was saying. I have a bad habit of talking out loud. As if to respond, there was a strange chugging sound from the bathroom. I almost flipped the board as I got up and hurried in there. The toilet was backed up, and water had begun to swell up. Cursing to myself, I plunged my hand down the drain to find what's clogged it, but there was nothing there. It had to be a piping issue. I considered fetching my tools, but as the foul-smelling basement water was spilling over, I decided I'd drain the pipes first. I opened the basement door and had to take a step back. The smell was so bad. Arnie was so worried, but he couldn't force himself to follow me down the stairs. He twisted and turned, stepping back and forth, tiptoeing the way concerned dogs do. Maybe he was just reflecting what I was feeling, and I was feeling nothing but concern. "Stay there, Arnie," I called out. "I'm just checking the filter." I'd had issues with the pipes before, but that was usually because of freezing. This was June. Nothing freezes in mid-June. There was an inch of water all over the basement floor. I turned on the lights, and the shadows grew longer. The smell was overwhelming. I could hear Arnie step back and forth upstairs, worried. It was obvious where the pipes was coming from. There was a T-section where something foul was leaking out, similar to a thick, black mud. I got my wrench and tightened the pipe, but the seal was pretty much broken. Drop by drop, it just plopped into the water. There was a pile of that black mud right underneath the pipe, large enough that I'd need a shovel to pick it all up. And even then, it'd take a couple of scoops. I was putting all my weight behind the wrench to seal the pipe when Arnie started going ballistic upstairs. I hurried up the stairs and saw Arnie crawled back under the couch, staring down the hallway. I followed his eyes. The shelves were empty. On the living room floor was the Ouija board, with the planchette held over a casual, "Later, dude." I walked into the hallway to check it out for myself. The RGB lights were still a strong green. My bedroom door moved. Every single toy was spread out through the room. Their bodies were facing me, but their heads were turned away. The back of all those childhood heroes, breaking their necks not to look at me. It was unsettling. I couldn't even begin to process how this was happening, and frankly, I was running out of explanations. I picked up my car keys, knocking over April O'Neil. I had every intention of just grabbing Arnie, starting my car, and getting out of there. There was a creaking sound as the basement door opened. The green RGB lights burst into white, then burned out. There was something foul-smelling in the hallway. I could hear something dripping onto the floor. It wasn't tall. A child, at most, covered in a black goo and sickly thin. I couldn't even see the skin, but the waist was so thin I could put a single hand around it and have my fingertips touch. Mechanically, it lurched forward through the hallway. It was heading towards me. I backed up against the wall, feeling for the window with my right hand. I couldn't find the lock, fumbling in the dark. I couldn't keep my eyes off the blob. It moved with stiff arms and legs, not bending a joint. As it bent down to pick something up, a part of the black goo slouched off to show a flawless porcelain white skin, a pair of black eyes, and an unmoving face. A neutral smile, as if painted on. It picked up the Donatello doll. There was an eerie moaning sound coming from it, like someone trying to breathe through a closed mouth. Then the perfect face crackled. It broke, giving way to an unhinged plastic-like jaw, with nothing but a black void underneath. The jaw hung loose, moving, trying to form a sentence, to say something. This was an either-or moment. This thing could kill me, I just felt it. It would kill me, and no one but Arnie would know the truth. It could burst forward, and my heart would just stop. It was already beating out of my chest, and my head wasn't getting enough oxygen to think. I was paralyzed. The unhinged jaw bobbed up and down, but no words came. Was it trying to laugh? A dripping little hand reached for me. I was up against the wall. How? Then, a bark. A loud, violent, angry bark. The kind of bark you don't expect from a Dachshund mix. I felt the cold radiating off the gooey fingertips. There was a sudden burst of light. I was blinded. The bedroom lights were back on. No goo. No reaching hands. No trace of what had happened here even showed, except for a few dark blue footprints that were quickly fading away. All the action figures were spread out across the room, all facing different directions. I just sank to the ground, sobbing, as Arnie ran up to comfort me. That brave little friend of mine. It had taken every inch of courage in him, but it might have just saved my life. The Donatello toy was gone. Was she just here to get her favourite back? Since that night, nothing else has happened. The backed-up toilet pretty much fixed itself. The RGB lights work again, and all the figurines stay as I put them. I thought about just throwing them all away, but despite all this, there's a part of me that loves them. Leonardo even gets to stay up front, now that Donatello is gone. I've read up on the family I bought these from. They were sort of easy to find. I know the guy who does their plumbing, and he hears a lot of stuff. Apparently their younger sister Christine, or Christy, had died back in the 90s to a rare blood disease. She'd been cremated. No one had the heart to clear out her room for almost 30 years. Her older brothers had been selling her things after the house had flooded a few weeks prior back in May. Her ashes had fallen off her shelf and mixed with the rainwater, making this weird ash-like black goo. The goo got stuck in the pipes. Actually, most of her old things were covered in the stuff. They'd just washed it off and sold it all as is on the yard sale, trying desperately to get that house and everything in it sold as soon as possible. Maybe they figured it was time to move on, no matter the cost. I don't know what to make of it. I think something happened to those two. I think there was a reason they were so upset, and why they wanted to get rid of it all so cheap. And the Ouija board, well, I still have it. I think it was some attempt to give Christy a proper goodbye, or a way to find her way back to the family from the other side. Now it doesn't do anything but to respond with, "Later, dude," no matter what you ask. But I have this creeping sensation that it doesn't just mean goodbye. I think it really means later. I think this thing never really says goodbye. It sticks with you. I think it will literally see me later, dude. Hi everyone, thanks for listening. That story was written by Saturdead. Please hit subscribe, like, and maybe join the membership so you can say, "I was here before she got weirdly famous." Perks include cool emojis, member badges, early access to videos and more. Oh, and I've lowered the top tier price, right down to its minimum, just in case anyone fancies an upgrade. You get everything from the first tier, plus merch discounts, member-only videos, and also have a story written about you if you stay for 3 months. Which would be a pretty cool thing to tell your friends, right? Yes, it would. Don't lie. Speaking of merch, I have merch now, so check that out. A massive shout out to my members. I can say members now. Mark Marthurn, 7322, and Evergnu. If you're on a mobile or tablet, please consider hyping the video. It pushes it a tiny bit further out into the YouTube wild. If you really, really enjoyed it, I think I have that super thanks button down there somewhere. Even £1 helps me toward my goal of making this a full-time thing. Then I can just have one full-time thing instead of my day job and this full-time. I'm here a lot. I've been singing Teenage Mutant Ninja Ouija board for the last half an hour. Send help. Good night.